بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى اللهم وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Welcome to the Resilient Hour, a program that we began during the pandemic when we couldn't gather in person. Since then, it's continued due to its popularity, alhamdulillah, and the meaningful conversation that we've been having through this. This is the final hour before iftar, and oftentimes it can be the hardest, and that's what inspired the actual name, the Resilient Hour. It is the time when we reflect, recharge, and find strength. We have some amazing conversations for you on this program here, and tonight is not going to be any different. But before we begin the actual program, I want to ask you to share this video, whether you're watching it on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn. We're also streaming on that. Whether you're watching it anywhere, really, I'd love for you to go ahead and to share the actual program with everybody else. Comment also, let us know where you're joining us from. That's really, really important for the algorithm, as you know. If you just comment with something, say Assalamu alaikum. Tell us how much you love the program. Tell us how much you've learned from it. Tell us what you'd like changed as well. In these conversations, we also ask you, I actually really, in a sense, encourage you to go ahead and to tell us what you want to see from this program itself. So if you have any questions to our guests, we would love to also see that in the comments. So tonight episode, we are going to be discussing a reality that's faced by Muslims with disabilities, the challenges that they experience, and how we as a community can better support people with disabilities. I'm really honored, honestly, and to welcome tonight's special guest, Sister Rafia Haniff-Cleofas. She's been an advocate for disability inclusion and has been actively involved with so many different organizations. She's one of the founders for MDI, Muslims with Disability International, Dean Support Services. She's been doing so many amazing work, really, alhamdulillah, and I don't want to praise her because she can hear me, but she knows she's been working hard. But before we do that, I want to begin with a recitation of the Quran, because that's just basically what we do as Muslims. Our basis for everything that we do is Quran. And our Qari for today is going to be Brother Affan Rahman. So let me just go ahead and bring him on. And let's see. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brother Affan, how are you?
Walaikum salam. Alhamdulillah, I'm doing good.
Brother Affan, it's always beautiful to see you. And it's always
I'm not sure if it's my internet or yours, but it's a bit slow.
yeah. Go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل يا عبادي الذين أسرفوا على أنفسهم لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله إن الله يغفر الذنوب جميعا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم وأنيبوا إلى ربكم وأسلموا له من قبل أن يأتيكم العذاب ثم لا تنصرون واتبعوا أحسن ما أنزل إليكم من ربكم من قبل أن يأتيكم العذاب بغتة وأنتم لا تشعرون أن تقول نفس يا حسرة على ما فرطت في جنب الله وإن كنت لمن الساخرين أو تقول لو أن الله هداني لكنت من المتقين أو تقول حين ترى العذاب أو تقول حين ترى العذاب لو أن لي كرة فأكون من المحسنين بلى قد جاءتك آياتي فكذبت بها واستكبرت وكنت من الكافرين صدق الله العظيم.
Barakallahu feek. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and give you Jannah, Brother Afani. It's a beautiful recitation as always. Alhamdulillah. All right. So I am just going to introduce our guest. I don't really know if I should actually introduce Sister Rafia in any way. She's honestly a local to our community. She's been doing so much work for the Islamic State of Toronto. Today, we are going to be highlighting some of the amazing work that she does. But tonight's conversation is more than that. It's about exploring topics such as disability as a test of faith, the challenges of navigating Islamic rituals with a disability, and then also the inherent value of every human, whether they're disabled or not, and also the prophetic approach to disability and how Muslim organizations can embrace inclusivity in meaningful ways. I'm really excited for this conversation, and I think you'll find it inspiring and insightful as well. So let me go ahead and bring Sister Rafia on. I will just click her on here. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sister Rafia, it is always a pleasure to see you. How are you?
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. So Rafia, one of the things that I actually, before you start doing your thing here, one of the reasons why we love having people with disabilities, when we were preparing for this program here, if you remember, you were telling me about some of the things that people within Muslim organizations are doing as they were doing as an accommodation, but because they didn't really consult someone with a disability itself, it just turned out to be a really mess. And I want to talk to you about this afterwards, obviously, but I do want to give you some time right now, inshallah ta'ala, so you can actually go ahead and I guess really explore these themes with us if you want, inshallah. We do have up to 7:25, I believe is when Adhan is today, or a little bit after that, inshallah. So whenever you're ready, inshallah, go ahead.
Jazakallah khair. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. So imagine waking up one morning and realizing the simple task you once took for granted, like, for example, making wudu, brushing your teeth, changing your clothes, have become significant challenges. For millions of people with disabilities, this is their daily reality. Disability in Islam is not something to be ashamed about. It's not a curse or a punishment, but a test from Allah. And if borne with patience, inshallah, it will lead to Jannah. Before I start, I just want to touch a little bit about a disability being ashamed, like being ashamed. You know, people are ashamed to have disability. I just want to relate an incident that happened with my son, Abdullah. He was about 5 years old. Came home from school. And so I said, Abdullah, what did you do at school today? Oh, we had to draw a picture of our family, right? So I said, okay. He pulls it out from his backpack and he's like showing me, this is mommy, this is daddy, this is Ahmad, and this is me, Abdullah. I said, okay. I looked at a picture and I said, but Abdullah, that doesn't look like me. He said, yes, that's you. You have your hijab on, right? He had a picture with hijab. I said, no, but mommy is standing. Mommy's not in a wheelchair. And I'm thinking in my mind, this child is ashamed of, having a mother with a disability. That's what I'm thinking. But I'm just trying him out. And he goes, no, mommy, remember? That is in Jannah, when we're all in Jannah. So, and as you know, in Jannah, there's no wheelchairs, and everyone would be walking, and everyone would be back to their, to regular setting, or as one of my friends says, factory setting. So, inshallah, that was a stark reminder for us too, right? That this life is temporary. This life, what we do in this life is very, very temporary. And our goal is Jannah. And that is, inshallah, that will be our reward depending on how we deal with the trials in this life. So Brother Mahmoud already explained a little bit about what we are going to be talking about today. And inshallah, a person's worth in Islam is not determined by their physical ability or wealth or appearance. Instead, it is defined by taqwa. It's one's consciousness of Allah. Prophet ﷺ said, he emphasized this in a powerful hadith. Allah does not look at your physical features or your wealth, but He looks at your hearts and your deeds. In Sahih Muslim. This means that in sight of Allah, our character, our sincerity, and actions hold more weight than our physical capabilities. And when we look at many of the great scholars had disabilities. Imam Tirmidhi was blind, yet he compiled one of the most authentic books of hadith. We have Imam Ibn Kathir was visually impaired, and he wrote one of the most famous Quranic commentaries. Their disabilities did not define them, nor should they define anyone today. Ability does not determine contribution, accessibility, and opportunity do. Disability is a test of faith. It's not a punishment. It's a unique form of divine testing designed to elevate and strengthen the soul. When we look at the story of Zafar, it's a very powerful example because she was a woman who suffered from seizures. And she approached the Prophet ﷺ and asked him to make dua for her healing. The Prophet ﷺ gave her a choice. He said, you can ask Allah for a cure, or you could bear the condition with patience and be guaranteed Jannah. How amazing is that? Zafar, radiallahu anh, she chose patience and made a request. She made a request, asked the Prophet ﷺ to pray that she would no longer be exposed in public during her seizures. He honored her dignity and made dua for her. So from this we can see that disability is not a barrier to Jannah. It is a pathway when met with patience. And the Prophet ﷺ empowered Zafar by giving her agency over her condition. He gave her the options. And then the whole issue around respect and dignity are essential when engaging with people with disabilities today. It brings the opportunity for immense reward and closeness to Allah. When we look at how the Prophet ﷺ approached disability, and he treated people with disabilities with respect, inclusion, and empowerment. For example, he appointed Abdullah ibn Maktoum, the blind companion, as a muazzim, right? He's blind, but he gave him the responsibility to call the adhan. And if you have to call, say, for example, the Fajr adhan, you have to see the time. You have to know the timing. He cannot see, but and the accommodation that he was given was that he was assigned a person to tell him the time. So not only giving him the responsibility to do the job, but also the accommodation to ensure that he is successful in what he does. The Prophet ﷺ also left him in charge of Medina, and that is a leadership position, and despite his disability, he was given that role. The Prophet ﷺ also modified religious practices to accommodate different abilities. For example, he said in Sahih Bukhari, pray standing, and if you cannot, then sitting, and if you cannot, then lying on the side. So there's so many options that are available depending on your disability. And you know what was interesting about this? I was speaking with some other people with disabilities who are not Muslims, and they were so amazed. They said, "You have that in your religion?" like this accommodation that we are fighting for today with the human rights code and a different human rights legislation. You have that built into Islam. And I'm like, yes, it's been there. It's there. And it's very, very strong. And not only during the Prophet ﷺ time, even going even back earlier than that, the tradition of inclusion started much earlier. And the story of Prophet Musa. Prophet Musa alayhi salam was had a speech impediment, and he was worried about his ability to communicate effectively with Pharaoh, who was a very powerful leader. And he made heartfelt dua. He said, Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li wa lil amri uqratan min lisani yafqahu qawli. My Lord, expand for me my chest and ease for me my task, and untie the knot from my tongue, that they may understand my speech. And you know what? Allah accommodated Musa alayhi salam, his needs in two ways. One is that he eased his speech, helped him to overcome the stutter that he had, and he also provided him a helper, his brother Harun alayhi salam, who was more eloquent and assisted him in his mission. And that was such an amazing gift that he got, because Harun, who his brother alayhi salam, not only was he there as a helper, but also as a prophet too. So alhamdulillah, that is such, it teaches an important lesson. Allah does not see disability as a limitation. Instead, provides support, accommodation, and opportunities for people to succeed. And as a community, we should also do the same. Now let's look at some of the barriers and challenges that people with disabilities face. Despite Islam's emphasis on inclusion, we still experience places are not welcoming. They're not accessible. You can't get into some buildings. There's no ramps, or there's no the door are heavy, are not automated, not easy to open, and sometimes there are no elevators in the mosque, and the wudu areas or their washroom areas are not accessible. So these are some of the challenges that we are facing. I have to say, alhamdulillah, mashallah, IIT is a very welcoming place, and one of the most accessible masjids are in the Toronto area. One of the biggest barrier we face is it's not only about ramps, but it's also about the social barriers. And one of the things is that attitudinal barriers is one of the biggest barriers we face, because if people have preconceived ideas of disabilities, right? And people have all these negative connotations of disability and who you are, and they're not welcoming. They don't want to be with you. They don't want to be, you are not part of the friend group. You're not the part of the volunteer group. You know, you can have a disability, but you can also volunteer too. And these things, and they're shunned this way, then it's not a welcoming environment. And sometimes that is the biggest barrier we face, is the attitudinal barrier. There's also lack of leadership opportunities for people with disabilities, and the emphasis on physical acts of worship without considering accessible alternatives. There's also communication barriers, lack of sign language interpreters for the deaf community, limited availability of Braille Quran or large print Islamic books, so that people who has low vision can actually be able to read the large print. Little support for neurodivergent Muslims, such as those with autism or sensory sensibilities. And it's sad sometimes. One of my friends was talking about her experiences with her mother, who took her child to the masjid, and the child had autism, and the child was making certain noise or hitting like that, and she was like she was like chastised by some people. Really, was such a brutal response she got, and she never went back to the masjid. And it's very, very sad that we are, chasing people from the masjid because of our attitude towards them. And there's some organizations like Deen Support Services. We provide tailored activities and programs for Muslims with disabilities. We work on masjid accessibility, Islamic education for those with disabilities, and advocacy. We also provide day programs. These efforts are all aligned with the prophetic tradition of inclusion. One of the things that is very, very important when dealing with disability and in general, is the power of gratitude and patience. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Amazing is the affair of the believer. Everything that happens to him is good. If something good happens, he's grateful, and that is good for him. And if something bad happens, he's patient, and that is good for him." A gratitude mindset shifts the focus from limitation to appreciation. And even when facing challenges, like if you always have this mindset of gratitude, right? I am grateful for my sight. I am grateful for my hearing. I'm grateful for my intellect. I'm grateful for the people who are around me, who are supportive, who are there to help me with whatever task that I have. You use your struggles to develop resilience. Those tested by Allah are also given opportunities for greater rewards. So there are more, there are more rewards the more struggle you make, and sometimes it's difficult, yes. But if you look at all the positive things that a situation brings, your mind is already set to look at the positive and the gratitude, and have gratitude for that. And when we have challenges, you find meaning in the challenges. Disability can bring patience, strength, and unique perspective that benefit others. So in terms of gratitude, it's not only for the person with disabilities, but generally speaking, everyone else. How can we help? It is not enough to acknowledge the issue, but we must act. Here is how we can support Muslims with disabilities. Advocate for accessibilities, encourage masjids and Islamic centers to ensure that their place is welcoming. There's a ramp, they have accessible doors, they have accessible washrooms. Support initiatives like Deen, volunteer, donate, and raise awareness. We also need to change our attitudes toward disabilities. Like, disability is not a burden, exclusion is. Promote leadership opportunities like the one with Prophet Musa alayhi salam, and like that of Abdullah ibn Maktoum, and not sideline individuals with disabilities. So in terms of our response, it is very, very important that we have I just want to talk a little bit more about Deen Support Services. We provide resources and social programs, spiritual support. We run a day program. We also want to expand to Scarborough and build a home here in Scarborough. Our waiting list is extremely, extremely long, because there's a demand for our services. And we need to expand to be able to provide the much needed services that the community needs. And we need to advocate for improved accessibility, inshallah. So support Deen Support Services financially so that we can expand our services. Jazakallah khairan. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them. I just want to end with this quote. It said, "The best of people are those who bring the most benefit to others." So our role as a community is to support, uplift, and create inclusive spaces for all. Jazakallah khairan.
Sister Rafia, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and give you Jannah for all that you do. Certainly, I appreciated your talk, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward you for all of this. I have some questions. I don't know. Am I, if I can, if I can ask? So I'm also involved. I don't know if you know or not, but I am also involved with some of the work for I guess really disability advocacy work within the community itself. I believe maybe we have talked before, but I do have a sister with an intellectual disability, and the challenge is so funny that you've mentioned one thing here that just like immediately struck with me, and I'm just assuming because I've heard it from more than one person, which is mothers who go to the masjid for some sort of support, not to for any sort of support, but just to get whatever Muslims get from the masjid in terms of spiritual support, and immediately they are, I don't want to say shunned, but they're uh, there's just no accommodation for their specific situation, um and whenever their sons, their daughters, or their children behave in any way that is not considered as normal, the leadership of the masjid, and I believe this has changed, by the way. I'm not going to say that this happens still, right? This I tell a story of something that's happened with my wife, sorry, with my mother back in 1996, which is a long time ago, where a comment from an imam on the member said, that he said something to her. He just basically prevented her from going back to the masjid. She just couldn't feel, she didn't feel welcome in the masjid anymore.
Mm.
And it's a challenge. It's honestly a genuine challenge to the faith itself. You, I'm certain, have gone through some sort of experiences like these, but you kept going. Like you kept going back to the masjid. Like I know you've told me stories of times when you said when things weren't at all welcoming for you in masajid, but yet you continued on going. And not only did you continue on going, but you pushed through to make people make accommodations for you. I don't know if there's a way, any experience that you can share that has happened to you, for instance, where disability has kind of challenged the way you approach a masjid.
Where do I start?
Sorry,
I've
all of them, my sister. Tell us
I've
all about it. I,
I've
so, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but the reason why I'm asking these questions because I don't want to turn this into a pity party. I know you don't like that, but what I did want to do is there's certain things that people don't understand unless they honestly hear stories, like real stories of things that have happened, right? Like many people don't have anybody with disabilities within their families, or they don't take care of somebody immediately in their family with a so they don't really know these stories.
Yes, yes, I've had many instances, and it was interesting. One day after Jummah, I was speaking to the two shuyukh's wife, two of them, and we were just speaking in the prayer area there, and then this woman came to me and she says, sister, nudges, your chair is nudges.
Mm,
And it was like so, like really loud and like really rude,
mhm,
and what was amazing about this is that the two wives, the sheikh's wife who were with me, they were the one who responded to her, and mashallah, it was such a beautiful response, and how they, dirt and or it's not najis, urine is najis, and
mhm,
saying that your prayer is invalid, but one of the things that I do as a person with a disability myself, yes, I know I come with my wheelchair, and I actually used to pray on the mat area. But before
mhm,
I come to the masjid, and this is for every Jummah, I used to clean my wheelchair, completely
mhm,
clean. So it goes into the van, it's already clean, and it's into the building. So it's there's not any a lot of dust or anything, on the chair. So I purposely do that, because I'm concerned about, it being on a mat. But then I also heard from others, people have they were very upset of where I was praying. And then I didn't want people to feel so strongly and hate. Like for me, that's when I started to move from the carpet area, even though it was like in a corner area, and move towards where all the seniors are sitting, by the chair there.
mhm.
And it's something we also, as people with disabilities, have to acknowledge where people are at in their
Yeah.
journey and understanding. So it's both ways. And if people, I don't want people to be praying and then have this negative feeling, going at the same time. Yeah.
But I guess it goes back to education. I mean, so if we assume, I guess this is going back maybe just from a religious perspective, we assume that your wheelchair is just kind of like your shoes. You're actually allowed to pray with your shoes on. Like it's just in almost every single school of fiqh, right?
Yeah,
That's something that's not a point of discussion really for anybody.
it goes back to the urf though, like what's the custom of the people,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
people
One of the
follow.
things that I saw in my trip in Saudi Arabia right now, which is in every single masjid in Saudi Arabia, there is an actual area, not an area for, but it's surrounding everywhere that you go where there's no carpet, right? It's just it's a place for people to actually walk, people to actually park their carts to go on. I was really impressed. I'm not gonna say. I know that a lot of people, sorry, look negatively upon, this, back home really style. But I was really impressed at the accommodations that was actually actually happened in the Middle East, really, in a sense, or specifically the actual place itself. What is
If I can just
yeah.
interject here, it's interesting that you mentioned Saudi, because one of the things I said to the person, this wheelchair went into Makkah, Medina, and even in Masjid Al Aqsa. And you're telling me I can't come with my wheelchair into this masjid?
Mhm.
So that was just amazing.
Yeah, I so I guess really we're talking about maybe education for the masses themselves from the actual community. I appreciate how you said that the imams' wives are the ones who actually stood up
Yeah.
for you and to talk about this. How can one who's without a disability be able to support this kind of work that you guys are doing? So like, so what should we be able to do, or should we do?
Well, we have volunteer opportunities. Once you volunteer with the organization, you get to learn. You're interacting more with people with disabilities, so that's practical, hands-on experience. Dealing with people with disabilities. So volunteer is one. Two is promoting awareness and education and understanding about disability issues.
Mhm.
And we always need financial support too, so to for us to do the work that we need to do, because there's a huge gap. Like, there's no other organization who is providing this kind of service in the community, so there's a huge gap there, and
Mhm.
our organization is doing that, for the community, basically, right? And so that's where we need that support.
Mhm. Okay. I do want to go back to the accommodation and accessibility within the actual masajid themselves and the spaces themselves. You said that you told me a story, for instance, about a masjid, and I guess really the bathroom of a masjid that tried to be accessible in within the actual bathroom space, because that's kind of the one where you need your privacy. You can't really ask people to help you, really, in a sense, right? So that's but it also talks about you the space. It's, you said the door itself. I don't know, maybe you could tell us the actual story itself, but the door that actually opens backwards, or door that opens outwards.
But basically, it is an accessible washroom, right? They have the space. The space is there. Alhamdulillah, it's a huge space for that washroom. But what's interesting is the person cannot close the door, because it's one of those little door that you can't even hold, grasp. And for someone like myself who can only use one hand, it's a challenge, right? So
Mhm.
the intent is good, but the actual reality is not, makes it inaccessible. Another example was, there was at another masjid. It was a huge, beautiful stall for the accessible washroom. And guess what they did? It was such a big space. They decided to put the recycling bin in the washroom, right?
Oh.
Right? So they make that beautiful, accessible place totally inaccessible, because the space was there and they feel that, they should do that. Another thing that happens sometimes, not in masjid, but in other places, is that they have an accessible washroom, but you have to get a key to go and open it, you know. And sometimes people, you can't find a person who has the key to open the washroom. So
Mm.
making beautiful, accessible things inaccessible by being negligent on different things.
So Rafia, I'm sorry. My camera just went off, so I'm going to just be talking to you with audio. So I hope you can hear me still.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, very good. How do we deal with these guys? So these are some of the things that you've actually mentioned right now, but and these are obviously well-intending masajid, right? So
Mhm.
the option, for instance, where that you have to go get a key. That's clearly meant for them to protect that space for people with disabilities, right? To protect their right to have their own space. But it is also clearly a sign of the fact that there is nobody with a disability making decisions. I guess I don't know if that's what it means or not. But what do you make of this?
Well, it's very important to involve people with disabilities at the beginning of any kind of a work or project that the massagists are doing, and there you would get feedback right away. What works, what doesn't work, what you think would work may not work for me. So it's very important for us to be involved. We can give feedback, consultation with Dean Support Services. We also provide consultations around accommodation and accessibility issues. We can also do an accessibility audit and let you know what needs to be done. What about the lighting in this room? It's not only about physical barriers, but also
Oh,
lighting and sound and trail the pathways so that people who are blind, it's easy for them to line up. I remember one sister was talking about her experience. She said she went to pray and she was praying there to this woman, and this woman was way out of line, and she's like in her mind thinking, "Oh, these people are always like that. They're like backward. They don't get into the line, right?"
mm-hmm.
When she finished praying, she realized that the woman next to her was a blind woman,
Mm.
and she couldn't see where the line was, or there was no tactile feeling for the line, and she felt so bad afterwards, right? That
So
her.
sorry, in that kind of a situation, and honestly, I'm asking because I don't know what usually happens. Like I know that brother Imam Imam Malik Abu Hafsa, for instance, one of the things that he says, he really, and he's also a person he's a blind man, but he's an imam and he's a sheikh of an actual masjid. He says one of the things that he does dislikes a lot, right, is actually people physically moving him. um how does one deal with that kind of, like, if a general person and I notice someone not standing in line, for instance, and I realize that
Mhm.
he's a person who cannot, he's blind. How do we? What should I do?
Just talk to them, sister. Come back a little bit so that we can be in the same line. That's it. That's
It's
it.
just it sounds too basic, too simple of a thing for anyone to
You
actually
know what?
do.
Islam is simple. Islam is simple. It's
Yeah.
simple. We are the ones who make it difficult.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. I honestly really appreciate it. I have so many different questions that I want to ask you about, but the accommodation and so on. But one of the things that caught my attention, which is you talking about an audit of a masjid. Just really briefly, I know you mentioned a couple of them, but what does that entail? Like, what do you look for when you go into a masjid and see if it
Okay,
is
like
acceptable or not?
yes. Okay, so for example, if a masjid has a ramp, right? Is it at a right incline, right? Or is it a very steep ramp, as we call it, a killer ramp? Um, we look at how doors are open from the outside or the inside. We went to a place once, and the washroom door was closing from the inside rather than opening from the inside. So it
Mm.
was very difficult to maneuver to get into that washroom, and different things about the pathway, the lighting, the um, as I said, the grade of the ramp, um, the automatic doors, inshallah,
Mm.
like the does it have a door? Does it need to have an automatic door? So those kinds of things, inshallah.
Mhm. So that, but this is a challenge, and I guess I'm gonna just pose this to you because it is a challenge. There's so many different types of disabilities,
Hmm.
right? And just like you said, like having a door on the inside for someone may be challenging. It actually having a door on the outside may be a challenge for someone else on the other side. Like I don't know how this works really in a sense because it becomes really difficult to try to accommodate every single person.
Well, we have the building code, and there are certain rules that we have to abide by for accessibility.
Yeah.
And then there's also the Accessibility of Ontario's Act, which also stipulates certain guidelines, inshallah.
Yeah. Okay. So that is the adhan for you guys in Scarborough. So I'm just gonna go ahead and end the program here, Sister Rafia. It's honestly always a pleasure to have you. May Allah Subhanahu wa Taala bless you and bless all the work you do. You have been an amazing, honestly, advocate for all the work that's being done. It is now Maghrib time. It has entered in the Greater Toronto area, and I'm just gonna make a notification for everybody who's outside the GTA. Please refer to your local prayer time. We're a little bit east of everybody else, so if you're watching us from, I don't know, BC, it's not time for you yet. So don't get too excited to do that, inshallah. Sister Rafia, it's a pleasure once again, and we will see you again, inshallah ta'ala. And now I will call the adhan.
Jazakallah khair.
Oh, yeah, inshallah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.